Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast. Today we're diving into the costly mistake that's happening on dairy farms across the country, the obsession with black-hided calves at the expense of real genetic performance. Are you throwing away thousands of dollars in potential profits with every breeding decision on your dairy farm? What if I told you that those cheap black Angus straws you've been using could actually be economic suicide for your operation? The numbers tell a shocking story. Since 2017, U.S. beef semen sales have skyrocketed by 6.5 million units, while Holstein semen sales plummeted by 6.3 million units. This massive shift has created a temporary market advantage, but those cheap black-hided beef semen straws aren't the bargain you think they are. While a generic black cross calf might fetch you $150 to $200 at birth compared to just $25 to $50 for a Holstein bull calf, premium beef crosses selected for the right genetics can command $225 to $250 per head. But that's just the beginning of the profit difference. In the next 20 minutes, I'll explain why those black calves in your pen might actually be Holstein steers in disguise. How proper genetic selection can improve your daily gain by up to 25%, and the specific traits you should be demanding from your semen representative. Let's dive in.
Okay, folks, gather around because we've got some data that's been kind of bugging us. And frankly, it's hard to ignore.
Yeah.
We're talking about a pretty big change since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, beef semen sales have gone up, a whopping 6.5 million here in the U.S.
Wow.
While Holstein semen sales have just tanked, down 6.3 million.
Really?
I mean, those are some serious numbers, folks, not just little blips on the radar. This is like the whole dairy landscape is shifting.
Yeah.
So you listening out there, I got to ask, are you part of this whole trend? Are you breeding for those black calves?
Well, it's a pretty natural response to how the market's been behaving, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
I mean, who wouldn't be drawn to the promise of better prices for those beef on dairy calves?
Right. It seems like easy money at first.
Yeah.
You just get that black hide and you're golden.
Yeah.
But that's where things get a little tricky. We might even call it black hide blindness.
Ooh, catchy.
Yeah, a little dramatic maybe.
Yeah.
But it really highlights this narrow focus we're seeing.
Yeah, it does. And the problem with that laser focus on just color is that we forget about the things that really matter for a profitable herd.
Right.
We get so fixated on the black hide that we kind of forget about what's underneath it.
Exactly.
The genetics that drive growth efficiency and carcass quality,
Ah.
those are what determine the real value in the long run.
Bingo. And that's why we're here today.
Wow.
We're not just going to throw numbers at you. We want to dig deep and figure out why these numbers are what they are, and more importantly, what it all means for your bottom line.
Exactly.
We've gone through a ton of research and industry data to give you the full picture so you can make smart breeding decisions.
Yes.
That go beyond just what color that calf is going to be.
That's right. We want you to have the knowledge to navigate this market strategically, not just react to it.
Exactly.
It's about seeing past that initial price difference and understanding what drives profit in the long haul.
Okay, so let's dig into this whole beef on dairy premium thing. It's the epicenter of this shift, wouldn't you say? What really kicked things off?
Well, I think the turning point was back in 2017, 2018, when the big meat packers, they basically stopped buying Holstein steers.
Oh, wow.
As a primary product.
Yeah.
That really tanked the demand and, of course, the market value for those steers.
Right, so a pretty standard option for some of those bull calves just kind of vanished.
Yeah, it wasn't viable anymore. The price just didn't make sense.
That must have been a shock to the industry.
Oh, it was a big shakeup. And, dairy producers, they're always looking for a good return.
Yeah.
So it quickly turned to beef breeds, especially Angus.
Oh, yeah.
With their reputation for those black hides.
Right.
And you can see it in the numbers between 2017 and 2022. Beef on dairy crosses just exploded. They filled that gap, making up almost 70% of the animals harvested that would have been Holstein steers before.
70%.
Yeah, that's a massive shift in a very short time.
That's huge.
Yeah.
No wonder everyone jumped on board.
It seemed like a simple solution, right?
Yeah, breed for black, get a better price.
Exactly.
But as Denise Schwab from Iowa State University Extension pointed out, it's kind of like saying, just find me some cheap Holstein semen.
Oh, Right.
You wouldn't do that for your dairy genetics, so why approach beef on dairy any differently?
It's a great analogy. You can't skimp on genetics. Even if you get that black calf, it's going to affect its value down the line.
Right.
And the market data from 2023, 2024 really shows this.
Okay.
A newborn Holstein bull might bring in, $25 to $50?
Yeah.
But a generic black crossbred calf, you're looking at $150 to $200.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty good deal, right?
It does at first glance.
Yeah.
But let's look a little closer at the feeder calf values.
No.
Those 500, 600 pounders.
Yeah.
The Holstein bull is still way behind, like $40 per hundredweight below a beef calf.
Oh.
So that's a $200 or $240 hit per head.
Ouch.
The generic black cross is better, but still $15, $20 per hundredweight behind.
Okay.
So that's $7,520 per head you're losing out on.
So just getting that black hide isn't enough?
Nope. You're leaving money on the table by not focusing on the genetics.
So what are we talking about for a premium beef cross then?
Now, those are interesting. Those newborns are valued even higher at $225 to $250. And as feeders, they're only $512 per hundredweight below straight beef. So the discount shrinks to a tiny $25.72 per head.
Okay.
You're looking at a potential 4 to 6 times higher value compared to that Holstein bull calf.
Oh.
But it's the quality of the beef cross,
Yeah.
the strategic genetic selection that makes the difference.
Right, so that easy money from just a black hide could disappear pretty quickly.
Yeah, if you're not careful, you could end up with a calf worth hundreds of dollars less than a strategically bred cross.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, and this isn't just a local thing. Yeah,
Oh, right, this is happening globally.
yeah, exactly. We see this reflected in the global market too.
What are we seeing in Europe, for example?
Well, European auction data from 2021 to 2023 consistently shows beef on dairy calves valued at 50% to 200% more per kilogram than purebred Holsteins or brown Swiss.
50% to 200% higher.
So this isn't just a U.S. phenomenon.
Nope, it's a global demand for a better product.
I find it interesting that Dan Thompson from Iowa State University seems pretty positive about these consistently grading beef dairy crosses.
Yeah.
It seems like when done right, these animals can be a real asset to the feeder cattle supply.
Right, but the key phrase there is consistently grading.
Yeah.
That comes from careful genetic selection, not just luck.
Now, before everyone goes crazy and buys up all the premium beef semen, we do have to issue a disclaimer here, right?
Absolutely. Market values are going to fluctuate for all cattle.
Right.
They go up and down depending on the season and the region.
Yeah.
So you folks listening, it's crucial to check with your local livestock markets.
Yeah.
See what the current prices are in your area.
Right. What we see as a general trend might not apply everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the market shift, the potential for better premiums, and the danger of just chasing black hides.
Yeah. Now let's move on to something fundamental no matter what color the calf is. Health and welfare.
Right.
Because a dead calf, black or otherwise, doesn't make you any money.
Very true.
So we've seen the potential economic upside.
Yeah.
But what are the potential downsides, the things to be cautious about beyond just the price?
Okay, well, one thing that's absolutely crucial is top-notch health management.
Right.
If you want these beef dairy crosses to thrive and reach their full potential, we see time and time again that respiratory disease is a major problem.
Yeah.
It's the second leading cause of death in those first 60 days of life. And then it becomes the leading cause after that.
That's a scary thought.
It is. And Sandra Sticken from the University of Wisconsin Extension, she's got some strong words about the damage even one case of pneumonia can do.
Right, long-term damage.
Yeah, her research shows that just one episode of respiratory disease in a calf can cause permanent lung damage.
Wow.
And that directly impacts their final carcass weight and quality grades.
So if you don't take care of those calves early on, it's going to cost you later.
Exactly. It's a domino effect.
Yeah.
A sick calf means a lighter carcass, lower quality meat, and less money in your pocket.
Now, beyond the calf's health, this trend of breeding dairy cows to beef sires also raises some welfare concerns for the cows themselves, right?
It does. There was a review published in PMC in 2023.
Okay.
And they raised some important points about using certain beef breeds on dairy cows. They found that it could increase gestation length, lead to dystocia, which is difficult calving, and even higher rates of stillbirths, depending on the breed.
That's a big deal.
It is, and the research really backs it up.
Okay.
Researchers looked at over 75,000 lactations,
Wow.
and they found a much higher risk of stillbirth in calves sired by crossbred beef bulls.
How much higher?
About 5% compared to just 2% for Holstein sired calves.
So more than double the risk.
Yeah,
And it's not just stillbirths, right? The length of the pregnancy is affected too.
that's right. Almost all beef sires tend to increase gestation length compared to that average 277 days we see in Holsteins.
Right.
For example, Limousin sires added about 5 days, bringing the gestation to 282 days, and Wagyu sires even longer, up to 285 days.
Wow. So these longer pregnancies can really impact your herd management.
Yeah, and the cow's subsequent lactation too.
So the key takeaway here is that it's not just about getting a black calf.
Right.
It's about choosing sires that are known for easy calving,
Yeah,
especially when you're breeding heifers.
absolutely.
You might get a slightly higher calf value, but at what cost?
Yeah, you could be increasing the risk and difficulty at calving time.
That's a tough trade-off.
It is. You need to find the right balance.
Right. It's not just about the calf's traits.
Yeah.
It's also about the cow's health and well-being.
Exactly. You got to think about the whole picture.
Okay, so we've covered the market, the premiums, the health and welfare concerns. Now let's get down to brass tacks and talk about performance.
Okay.
Because, as we mentioned earlier, not all black calves are created equal.
Right? There's a big difference between what we call black Holsteins and those high-performing beef crossbreds.
Yeah, that's a key distinction.
And a lot of the crosses we're seeing now, they basically inherit the dairy frame and characteristics.
Right, even with that black hide.
Exactly. And the research is clear on this dairy type, cattle just don't perform as well as beef types.
In what ways?
Well, they generally have lower feed efficiency, less muscle development, and a lower dressing percentage.
Meaning?
Less of that live weight actually becomes sellable meat.
So you might get that black calf,
Yeah.
but if it eats more to gain less weight and yields less meat in the end,
Mm-hmm.
that black hide premium might not be so great after all.
Yeah, and Denise Schwab's quote really hits home here.
Oh, yeah. What does she say?
She said, breeding just for color is like producing Holstein steers without a market for them.
Oh, right.
It highlights the problem of those tall black crossbreds that don't really fit in anywhere.
They're not what the dairy industry wants and not what the beef industry wants.
Fact.
So let's break down these performance differences with some numbers.
Sure.
Because this is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to profit.
Okay, so for average daily gain, a Holstein type animal might gain about 1.4 to 1.50 kilograms per day.
Okay.
Now, a quality beef crossbred can achieve 1.62 to 1.76 kilograms per day.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Yeah, that's an 8 to 25% improvement in growth rate.
And that means...
Fewer days on feed.
Right.
A well-bred cross can reach market weight 5 to 26 days sooner.
And with feed costs at $3.50 per head per day.
Those fewer days really add up to big savings.
Okay, so they grow faster and eat less for the same amount of gain. What about the actual meat yield, the dressing percentage?
Right. Well, a typical Holstein might dress out at less than 60%,
Okay.
but a quality beef crossbred will usually be over 61%. That extra percentage or two means more red meat yield, which means more value for the packer and ultimately a better price for you.
And we can't forget feed efficiency.
Oh, absolutely.
How efficiently they turn feed into weight.
Right. Well, quality beef crossbreds are just much more efficient at converting feed into muscle.
Okay.
That lowers your overall cost of gain, making them more profitable to feed out.
And then there's the big one, grading performance.
Yeah. Everyone's talking about quality grades these days.
Right. That's all about the meat quality.
Exactly. And dairy-type carcasses tend to grade lower. They have less marbling, less of that intramuscular fat, so they don't hit those high-value prime and choice grades as often.
And the beef crossbreds.
Quality beef crossbreds can have 15 to 25% higher rates of hitting those premium grades.
Wow.
And those grades come with big price premiums.
So when you add it all up,
Yeah.
faster growth, less feed, better yield, higher quality.
These aren't just little improvements. They're huge profit multipliers.
And if you're just breeding for a black hide and ending up with a low-yielding, low-quality carcass,
Yeah.
you're probably going to see more price deductions than premiums.
That's right. The color might get you in the door, but performance is what pays the bills.
So this really emphasizes the importance of breed selection. It's not just about picking any black bull, it's about choosing genetics that will actually deliver.
Right.
And the data shows some key differences between beef breeds commonly used on dairy cows.
Yeah. For example, Angus consistently performs really well.
In what ways?
They have a high average daily gain around 1.76 kilogram a day, and they tend to reach market weight quickly. Plus, they're known for producing excellent marbling, and they have a moderate frame size, which is often what you want in a beef dairy cross.
What about Charolais? They're known for fast growth, right?
Yeah, Charolais crosses also grow quickly, around 1.73 kilogram a day, and have a relatively short feeding time. They're known for their muscle development and larger frame, which is great for meat yield.
Okay.
But you might need to be a bit more careful when using them on dairy cows, especially heifers, because they could have calving difficulties.
And Simmental.
Simmental crosses are a good all-around choice, with an average daily gain of about 1.68 kilogram a day and a relatively short feeding time. They have good growth and a moderate frame, making them a versatile option.
Now, Limousin are also known for good muscle yield, but it seems there's a trade-off there.
Yeah, Limousin crosses do have excellent muscle yield, with an average daily gain of around 1.65 kilograms a day and a good dressing percentage.
Okay.
But they also tend to have a longer gestation length. And as we discussed earlier, that can lead to economic losses because of delayed rebreeding and other factors.
Now, there was some research out of Penn State that really supported the performance of Angus Charolais and Simmental crosses in terms of growth rate and how quickly they reach market weight.
Right. Their study, published in the Journal of Animal Science, showed that those three breeds consistently performed the best.
Okay.
They had the highest average daily gain and the shortest time on feed when crossed with Holsteins.
And that point about the longer gestation with Limousin is important.
Yeah, those extra days can really add up to lost money.
It's something to consider carefully when choosing a sire.
Especially if you're aiming for a tight calving interval. You got to weigh the pros and cons.
It's interesting what Dan Schaefer said about the amazing challenge of trying to hit certified Angus beef standards in just one generation of crossbreeding.
Yeah.
It shows that it's not a quick fix. It takes consistent and careful selection over time to reach those goals.
Exactly. Just using any Angus bull isn't a guarantee of getting those premium grades.
Right. You need to be selective even within the breed.
Exactly.
Now, all this information is great, but this whole beef on dairy thing is still relatively new and constantly evolving.
Yeah, there's new research coming out all the time.
It's exciting.
It is, and it's great to see organizations like the Iowa Beef Industry Council funding research in this area.
Oh, yeah. What are they doing?
Well, they're funding a 3-part research project through the Iowa Beef Center, specifically to address the knowledge gaps in beef on dairy production.
That's fantastic.
Really practical research.
Right.
They're actually following these calves from birth to harvest. They're feeding 3 groups of beef dairy crosses at the Iowa State Feed Intake Monitoring System, tracking their feed intake growth and then collecting detailed carcass data.
So they're getting the whole picture.
Exactly. And Gail Carpenter from ISU Extension, she emphasizes that this is still a new area.
Right.
And the goal is to get producers the most up-to-date information.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
When will we start seeing some results?
Well, the first group of calves was expected to reach market weight around March of 2025.
Okay, so soon.
Yeah, so we should start seeing some preliminary data soon and then more as the other 2 groups are harvested.
Now, it's not just the U.S. that's doing this kind of research, right? Other countries are developing tools for beef on dairy breeding decisions.
Yes.
What are they doing in Ireland, for example?
Well, Ireland has developed a beef on dairy index. They call it the BUD index.
Okay.
And this index ranks bulls based on the expected economic output of their calves, considering factors like calving difficulty and carcass characteristics.
It's a well-rounded approach.
Exactly. It's not just about one trait.
And the Nordic countries are involved too, right?
Yeah. Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, they've introduced the Nordic Beef on Dairy Index, or NBDI.
Okay.
And their index includes 7 key traits, focusing on minimizing calving difficulty and stillbirth rates and maximizing carcass value.
So they're really addressing those welfare concerns we talked about.
Absolutely. They're trying to select for both profitability and animal well-being.
These international efforts really show that beef on dairy isn't just a fad. It's a serious strategy, and it requires a strategic approach to breeding.
Yeah, these indexes give breeders the tools to make informed decisions.
Right, decisions that benefit both the dairy farm and the beef market.
Exactly.
Now, for some producers, all this talk of indexes and EPDs might be a bit overwhelming.
Oh, yeah, it can seem complicated.
The article did mention situations where a simpler approach might be better.
Right.
Can you walk us through those?
Sure. Well, for producers who don't have a lot of time or resources to dive into the genetics,
Yeah.
just choosing reputable Angus genetics with good calving ease is still a good strategy.
Better than just picking any black bull.
Exactly. You're at least addressing that risk of difficult births.
What about smaller herds? If you're only breeding a few cows to beef, does it make sense to do all that genetic analysis?
In very small herds, say less than 25 cows, the return on investment for in-depth analysis might not be worth it.
Okay.
In those cases, it's probably better to focus on just a few key traits and choose a bull with a proven track record for those traits.
And we have to acknowledge that the cost of premium semen can be a barrier for some.
Yeah, it's more expensive.
The article mentioned a $5 to $15 difference per straw.
Right. And for producers with tight budgets, phasing in better genetics gradually might be a good approach.
How would they do that?
Well, they could start by using higher quality semen on their best cows or heifers, and then expand the program as their budget allows.
James Westfield is a great example of this.
Oh yeah, he's a great example.
He started with cheap Angus semen and saw a small price increase. Right. But then he really focused on traits like moderate frame and superior muscling, and saw a much bigger jump in his calf prices.
And the best part is it only cost him about $8 more per straw.
That's a great return on investment.
It is. It shows that even a small increase in semen cost can lead to big improvements in calf value if you're strategic about it.
So it's not all or nothing.
Right.
Producers can start small and gradually incorporate better genetics as they learn and see the benefits.
Exactly. The key is to move away from just color-based selection and start thinking about the underlying genetics.
Even if you're just focusing on one or two traits at first.
Right. Any step in the right direction is a good step.
Now let's talk about turning all this knowledge into profit. The article mentions some resources that can help producers make better breeding decisions.
Yes. There are some great resources out there, specifically for beef on dairy crossbreeding.
Like what?
Well, the Iowa Beef Industry Council has funded a web resource library, and you can access it through the Iowa Beef Center and the Iowa State University Dairy Team websites.
So it's easy to find.
Yeah, and Denise Schwab, she points out that this isn't just generic breeding advice. It's tailored specifically for the challenges and opportunities of beef on dairy crosses.
So it's really practical information.
Exactly. It's based on the latest research and designed to help producers make decisions on their farms.
The article also has a table that outlines expert selection criteria for beef on dairy sires.
Oh yeah, that's a handy table.
Can you go over some of those key targets?
Sure. Well, for calving ease, you want to look for sires in the top 30 to 50% for their breed's EPD for calving ease.
Okay, and what does EPD stand for again?
EPD stands for expected progeny difference.
Right.
It's basically an estimate of how a bull's calves are expected to perform for a specific trait compared to the average for the breed.
So it's a way to compare bulls.
Exactly.
Okay, back to the selection criteria.
Right. So for birth weight, you generally want sires in the bottom 50% for their birth weight EPD.
To keep those calves from getting too big.
Right.
What about the traits for growth and carcass quality?
Well, for weaning weight and yearling weight, aiming for sires in the top 40 to 60% is a good balance.
Okay.
You want good growth, but not excessively large animals.
Right.
For ribeye area, which is a measure of muscling, you want sires in the top 25%. And for marbling, which affects meat quality, aim for the top 20 to 25%.
Okay. And for back fat?
You want a moderate to low EPD for back fat to avoid too much fat in the carcass.
So those are some specific targets producers can look for.
Yeah, gives them something concrete to aim for.
The article also explains some other important terms like frame score, ribeye area, marbling score, yield grade dressing percentage, and dystocia.
Right, it's like a whole new language.
But it's a language that can help you make more money.
Exactly. Understanding these terms is crucial for making informed breeding decisions.
Now, as we've discussed, this isn't just a U.S. trend. There's global support for well-bred beef on dairy crosses.
Yeah, the auction data from Italy is a good example.
What did they find?
They found that beef on dairy calves were selling for 50% to 200% more per kilogram than pure dairy calves.
Wow.
It shows that there's strong international demand for these crosses.
And countries like New Zealand and Australia are integrating beef breeding into their herd improvement strategies.
Yeah, they're using genomic selection to make those decisions.
That's pretty advanced.
It is, and it shows that they see long-term value in this approach.
The auction data from Canada also supports this.
Right. Beef on dairy bull calves in Canada are consistently selling for a premium.
How much?
Anywhere from $30 to $140 Canadian more than pure dairy bull calves.
That's a big difference.
It is. And that 2023 PMC review we talked about.
Yeah.
They summed it up nicely by saying that meat from well-bred beef on dairy crosses is definitely marketable as beef.
Okay.
And while the quantity might be slightly less than some beef breeds, the quality is significantly higher than from pure dairy animals.
So it's a win-win?
Yeah, you get a good product that's in demand.
Now, the article did address some concerns that producers might have about this more strategic approach to breeding.
Yeah, there are always concerns when you're trying something new.
What are some of the common ones?
Well, one concern is that it's too complicated.
Yeah, all the EPDs and indexes can seem daunting.
They can, but the potential benefits are worth it. And as we said, you can start simple and gradually learn more.
Right. You don't have to become a genetics expert overnight.
Exactly. And there are AI companies that offer pre-selected beef on dairy packages to make it easier.
That's helpful.
Another concern is the cost of premium semen.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
It is, but you have to look at the return on investment. That more expensive straw of semen could lead to a much higher price for the calf.
Right. It's about long-term profit, not just short-term savings.
Exactly.
And then there are producers who think their current program is fine.
Yeah, they're getting black calves at a decent price.
But as you said, the market is changing.
It is. Buyers are becoming more discerning, and that price difference between generic black calves and those high-performing crosses is likely to widen.
So just breeding for black might not be a good strategy for much longer.
Right. The market is evolving, and you have to keep up.
So it comes down to a choice. Do you stick with the status quo and risk losing out?
Yeah.
Or do you embrace a more strategic approach and position yourself for long-term success?
That's the question every producer has to answer.
The shift we saw from 2017 to 2022 with beef on dairy crosses replacing 70% of Holstein steers.
Yeah.
That was a huge market transformation.
It was.
This isn't a niche market anymore.
Right. It's a major part of the beef supply chain.
And those well-bred crosses offer significant advantages. Faster growth, shorter feeding, times better carcass, yield higher quality grades.
All of that contributes to a more profitable animal.
Absolutely. But we do have to remember that those premiums can vary.
Yeah.
And they're always subject to market fluctuation.
Right. So producers need to stay informed about their local conditions.
So the question for you, the listener, is this. Are you breeding problem calves?
Yeah.
Or are you breeding premium crossbreds?
Right. Which one do you want to be known for?
Your next breeding decision is crucial.
It is.
It could make or break your profitability.
The semen catalog is open, folks. Choose wisely.
Okay, let's recap the key takeaways from our deep dive into beef on dairy breeding.
Okay.
First, genetic selection matters. Quality beef crosses have the potential for better growth efficiency and carcass quality.
It's been proven time and time again.
Second, target specific traits when selecting sires.
Yeah.
Aim for the top percentages for ribeye area marbling and maintain a moderate frame score.
Those are the traits that will pay off.
Third, don't forget about animal health.
Right.
Respiratory disease is a major threat, so make sure those calves get good colostrum and proper vaccinations.
Got to give them a good start.
Fourth, the economics are clear. Investing in premium genetics can lead to a much higher return.
Yeah, that extra $10 to $15 per straw could turn into $35 to $75 or more per calf.
That's a no-brainer.
It's an investment worth considering.
And finally, the market is constantly evolving.
Right.
Those low-quality crosses are becoming more common.
Yeah.
And that means the premium for just any black calf is likely to shrink.
So you got to stay ahead of the curve, focus on genetic merit.
So here's a final thought for you. What's one change you can make in your breeding strategy right now to move beyond that black hide blindness and really secure your future in this market?
It's time to take action.
Take some time. Explore the resources at the Iowa Beef Center.
There's a wealth of information out there to help you make the best decisions.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, folks.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see.
That brings us to the end of today's episode on black hide blindness. Let's quickly recap what we've learned. First, the market is evolving. As more poor quality crosses flood feedlots, buyers are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and the price spread between generic black calves and premium crosses will only widen. Second, the numbers don't lie. Quality beef crossbreds achieve 8 to 25% better daily gain, need 5 to 26 fewer days on feed, and grade 15 to 25% higher than generic black crosses. That $10-15 premium per straw can return $35 to $75 per animal in improved market value. Finally, remember that your breeding decisions today determine your profitability tomorrow. Ask yourself, are you producing the next generation of problem calves that nobody wants, or are you creating crossbreds that will command premiums for years to come? If you found this information valuable, visit thebullvine.com for our full article with detailed selection criteria and performance data. You can also find links to our recommended resources for beef on dairy breeding in the show notes. Thanks for listening to the Bullvine Podcast, where we're not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom when your bottom line is at stake. Until next time, choose your genetics wisely. Your future profitability depends on it.